You know, I was on vacation last week. And so the last Sunday that I was here, just before worship, Katie Miller-Helm said something to me that stuck with me all through vacation. And actually, it started eating at me right during worship the whole time. So she had been listening to this interview. If you're familiar with NPR, there's a show on there called On Being, and so she'd been listening to this. And so she shared with me a comment that she had heard on this interview. And the comment was, "We are bullied by time." And I don't know if she told it to me because she knew I was going on vacation and thought maybe I felt that way, or if she felt that way, or both. But I do know that it landed right in the core of my being. Bullied by time, which is such an odd dichotomy when time can be such a sacrament. And I do think of time as somewhat sacramental, as holy, as a gift from God, something that can be treasured and respected. And there's also the third commandment, which says, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. So, truth be told, even though I think that time is holy, most of the time I don't act that way. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that's why Katie's statement was bugging me so much, because time was bullying me. And I felt a little bit beat up by it. And I'm sure that that's not God's intention. Well, I did not have grand plans of a vacation. Mostly, I just wanted to relax. So on Tuesday of my vacation, I was having lunch with a friend. And as our food arrived, this is sort of my normal practice if you've had lunch with me. I held out my hands and said, do you want me to pray? And they did. And so I started to pray. And I didn't have any words. And then I sort of started to cry, and I was holding back tears. And the tears were because I wanted to speak and I couldn't speak. And because I missed my friend. And as odd as this will sound, I was missing God. And I knew that something wasn't right. And I didn't need time to relax. But I did need time to connect, because I had not only been bullied by time, but I had become a slave to it. Now, I know that I'm not the only person who feels like this. So if you're like me, if you are someone who is running their kids from event to event, who makes way too many dinners, which consist of pasta and chicken patty sandwiches, and who is trying really hard to do well in their job, or if you are somebody who spends more time than they want to at home, waiting for the phone to ring from a son or a daughter or somebody, and thinking, wow, it used to feel like I had all the time in the world. Where did it go? Or if you are younger, maybe you have been told since the moment you were born, hurry up, we're going to be late. And being late is all you can manage, because you stayed up until 11:30 finishing homework after you got home late from track practice, and then you get up at 6 a.m., and every single day is like that over and over. It's pretty much a miracle that you keep going. No matter who we are bullied by time. We've been enslaved by it, and it has been this way forever. Because in today's reading, the people are arguing over the Sabbath, what constitutes a Sabbath, and how exactly to keep it holy, which are all really very, very good questions that they ask. And they are very good questions for us. Because as we delve into the underlying pieces of the story, it's very clear that the people think that keeping a Sabbath holy is done just by observing it. They have the exact same issue that we do. They've become beaten up and enslaved by time through their strict observation of time. Many of us know that according to Genesis, God made the universe and everything in it and then rested. Sort of, if you will, kicked up his proverbial legs and chilled out. So if God did it, right, then we should too. But mostly we act like, well, we should if we wanted to. Like a break would be good. But I think often we act like sometimes we might have a bit more stamina than God. Maybe we don't need a break. God didn't just give us the Sabbath so we could sleep in later one day a week. See, God might have been exhausted, but God got to take a break if he needed one. And the Jews did not. They had been enslaved in Egypt. They had been held captive by Pharaoh. And they'd been forced to work 24/7, every single day of the week. There was no freedom, and there was no relief. There was just constant berating to do more, to be more, to produce more, to build more. Did you ever feel like that? Well, God brought them out of all of that. He parted the seas and protected their paths. And God also gave them the 10 Commandments, including the one about the Sabbath, one about solemn and holy rest. See, celebrating the Sabbath is not just about rest. It is also about celebrating freedom. It is a proclamation to the entire world that we are not slaves anymore, that we are free, that we've been gifted time by God. And it's not that we've been given more time. We've been given better time. The Sabbath was a time to bask and breathe and behold. Because that's what I think God did on the seventh day. He took in all that had gone on before him, before the previous 6 days, and all that lied before him. And he basked in it, and he saw the goodness of it, and he breathed in the splendor of the day and connected. God didn't sit there in his easy chair, dozing off as he read the Washington Post with his coffee sitting next to him. I mean, that sounds like a great idea, but that's a break. That's not a Sabbath, and God didn't need to give us a commandment to read the Post. There's a difference between taking time and practicing Sabbath. I don't want to live my life wishing I had more time, or wishing my time that I do have away. And this is what the Jewish elders do. They hoard the time they've been given so tightly that in essence they end up whittling it away. They enslave themselves. And this is why Jesus is so irked. So what is the Sabbath? And why does Jesus think it's so important? And if it really is that important, why aren't we taking one? See, I've actually changed my tune on this a little bit, mostly over the past few weeks. Had you asked me a couple months ago, I would have said that my Sabbath time is when I run. Because those early morning wake-up calls, when it's just me and my running shoes and my prayers and God, that time is really holy to me. It's my time to connect with God. Since I work on Sundays, Sundays aren't a complete Sabbath to me. And since I have 3 kids, Saturdays are out because we predominantly run around like chickens with our head cut off. And every other day of the week, by the time we get to the end of it, we just collapse into bed. So running was my answer to Sabbath. And some of you may have things like this too, things that ground you. Well, the truth is, last week, and the week before that, and every single other week before that, I had been running. I hadn't stopped running. And clearly, something wasn't working. I wasn't feeling connected to my family or to my friends or to God or to myself. The Sabbath time I was taking wasn't working. And I just wasn't sure why it wasn't working anymore. And the more disturbing question was, I wasn't entirely sure how to make it work again. And that is a terrible feeling. But I thought it would be better to be honest and state that for many of us, what we're doing in regards to Sabbath isn't working, than pretend like it always does. So I'm wondering if you do what God did on a regular basis for an extended period of time. Do you take time to admire and breathe and connect and enjoy? And if you don't, if you did, would things be different? Would they be different for you? And would they be different for others? Jesus would say that yes, it would make all the difference in the world. And actually what Jesus would say would be that if you lived that way, it would be like living heaven. Now, I'm guessing that as I'm talking, maybe some of you are feeling like that would be great. Like, I really want that. There aren't very many of us that would say we don't want that. But how, right? That how question is what haunted me over vacation, when I began to realize that how I practiced Sabbath wasn't working anymore. Well, I determined that I had done one thing right in the past when it had worked. I had a plan. And this was also true for the Jewish folks we meet today. They had a plan, which consisted of rules and practices, which helped them maintain their relationship with God and with others and with themselves. And this plan they had worked in the past for their ancestors. But at some point, the plan became the point, instead of the plan being an instrument. And Jesus points out that they need a new plan. I need a new plan. And maybe you do too. Well, as my vacation drew to an end, I realized that I didn't want it to end, and I'm sure none of us ever want vacation to end, right? But it wasn't that. It wasn't the skiing or the running or the playing or the shopping, and it wasn't even the nice pedicure. All that was good, and it was really nice. But that wasn't what I didn't want to end. I had breathed and beheld and basked in what is so very, very good in my life. And in all those things, in all those people, I saw God. And I didn't want to go back to the lunchroom table when I felt like I wanted to cry because of loneliness and exhaustion and fragmentation. I had realized that I had been refusing this gift from God for too long, and I had lost time with friends and family, and I had wasted too much time trying to complete tasks that are never going to be done. Like, the laundry is always going to be there. And all that disconnect pulls me away from God. And it pulls you away from God too. And I didn't want to go back to that. And Jesus doesn't want me to do that, and Jesus doesn't want you to do that. That's why he's so passionate about the Sabbath. So I'm not going back. And I'm just exploring what this looked like. But I know one thing for certain. Sabbath doesn't just happen. I can't just wait for it to show up. And it isn't just sleeping in. And it isn't taking a break every once in a while. And it isn't even just showing up to church on Sundays, which can be part of it, but that's not all of what it is. The Sabbath is a practice, and it begins as a state of mind, a time we consciously give up control and power. And so I'm thinking and praying a lot about this. Because Jesus asks on the Sabbath, will you save life or destroy life? The gift of the Sabbath is to save our life. For the sake of me and my family, I need to learn how to practice Sabbath again. intentionally and regularly. Now, I was thinking about this a lot, obviously, and I wish I had more of it figured out. I wish I could give you my plan and say, this works for me, but I'm not that far yet. And the thing is, if you believe Jesus, Sabbath is going to look different for different people depending on their experiences and what's going on around them. So I can't give you my plan, even if I had it all fleshed out. I am going to talk to my family about it, and it's taken me a long time to get to this realization. But I hope that you will consider it too, intentionally practicing Sabbath, and talk to your family and your friends and your coworkers. Because can you imagine a world where everyone practiced the true spirit of the Sabbath just one day a week? We would look into our children's eyes and see hope more often. We would turn off our computers and we would snuggle on the couch much more than we do now. And we would see interruptions as opportunities because there just isn't that much of a schedule for the day. And we would play again. And we would laugh again. And we would probably cry a lot more too. And this is the life that Jesus imagines for us. Because the question is, will you be bullied by time or freed into the life